Hello everyone, I've got this multiplayer CJD-2000 Nexus made by Pioneer, used by DJs. CD goes in the front and then you queue up using all the controls and USB linked. Fantastic piece of kit, a workhorse of the DJ industry, but it has one big schoolboy design fault. Looks the part, you know this anyway, but yeah, it's a popular piece of kit, but seen many of these, and they've got one really glaring design error, which is this link socket in the back. If I can just zoom in on that, you might be able to see a bit better. I can hold this damn thing. The fault's to do with this link socket, this B socket in the back. Look, they always come detached. This one's completely dropped off inside the unit. You can see, can you see if I turn it around that way? You can see the socket has just gone completely adrift in there. If I give it a poke. Classic case of an inappropriate part used in an inappropriate situation, the way it mounts on the board, and it just comes off. And it's such a shame because it can happen in the middle of a gig. You can get to a gig and find out that whoever unplugged it last time didn't take due care. Unless you test your gear or you have a spare before every gig, you're going to have a problem. So we're going to look at replacing this socket and also improving the design by anchoring the socket. So I'm not going to show you taking this apart. There's a bunch of screws in the back. I'm assuming if you're watching this video you know how to take one apart, but I think you'll find the soldering and repair of the PCB and the mounting of the new socket interesting in case you have to do one yourself. It might help you to fix your unit and also prevent this coming detached in the future. So I'm going to go and take it apart, and then we'll resume when we've got the board out and we're going to have a go at fixing on a new socket. Okay, I've taken the logic card out of the back of the unit. This is it. Processors and things on one side, DSP, control, interface to the CD drive and so on. And this is where the offending socket fits on. You can see it's been repaired before. You can see this bird shit soldering down here and gouging of the board. And the real problem about this thing is it has no anchoring to the board. It's got these two pegs here which locate in these two holes. I'll give you a bit of a close-up on this so you can see the sheer horror. So this may be the second or third time in its life that this socket has been changed, and my object here is to fix this on properly so it can't come off, or is much less likely to come off, thereby making it much more reliable, because you don't need this if you're a professional DJ. Okay, so looking at this socket, I'll just show you the new socket here. Look, here's the new socket, and the problem with it is that this is just lying on the board located by these two holes, these two pegs that go into holes in the PCB, and the only thing that's holding it on is these tiny little tags just here, and that's just not simply insufficient. This is designed to go into an opening and be held or secured by a panel or something mechanical to hold this onto the board. You need to physically hold this down onto the board with the enclosure, so that when you slot the PCB in, it can't move upwards and it can't be pulled that way because these pegs are located. If you just sit this on the board, someone plugs something into it and it can be pulled up, you're in trouble. Okay, so that's the problem. It's just it's a good socket, badly implemented in the housing and on the PCB. A schoolboy design error which cause us people that want to use their expensive kit a lot of issues. Okay, a lot of issues. So you've got your basic 6 connections on the back. There's the new one, there's the old one. You can see it's pulled the tracking off. The tracking on the other side there is completely missing on the board. If I just show you that, it's gone. That one seems to be more or less intact, although there is some sort of flaking of the tracking. We'll clean that up in a moment and we'll have a look and see what we've got. And you can see someone has wired this on before, because before the pads have been completely pulled off. They haven't bothered to clean it, they just whopped a new one on. And I think those tracks look intact. We will buzz them out to make sure that we can make a stable connection on those, but we've got to clean this up. And if I just put this in place, you can see there's no tracking to solder that retaining lug, even though that retaining lug, that anchoring lug, is really there only for electrical purposes, not there for mechanical purposes. There's something on this side, but you can see all these tracks apart from the end two. There's 6 connections on this. It is an RJ45 socket. So we've just basically got to locate the socket, anchor it, solder it down, and then reconnect these 4 tracks. I think these are okay. So let's just buzz out these to make sure there's no hairline cracks or anything in them. Alright, you can hear the beep. Just make sure there's some connection on these things. That's connected. You can see this track here. It's a little bit wobbly there. Is not connected. There's a break in the track. Can you see that just there? This track is broken somewhere. Yeah, there's a bit of copper missing. So don't know how that's happened. Digging with the soldering iron maybe, but let's first of all let's give it a damn good clean. So what we're going to do, zoom out slightly. We've got a Weller 80-watt soldering iron with a what needs to be a new tip but isn't, so we're going to have to clean this one up. So what do you do when you've got a dirty tip? You get the tip cleaner. Boing. It's not a sample of moon rock. It's actually a tip cleaning pot. They come in little silver pots, and when the focus comes back, we'll see that. See what it does to your tip. Now we have a nice shiny tip. Give it a wipe off the dribbles, and now we've recovered our tip. This tip is gone because what you can't see is that normally there will be a point on the end, and when the point breaks down you get some sort of corrosion on the inside, so they become less effective as they after a few months of use you have to change the tip. But do you know what, I can't find my spare ones anywhere. I have got some, but I don't know where they are. So let's have a go at this board. Right, what I'm going to do to clean it is to first of all give it a bit of a rub over with some of this stuff. Chemi wick. Now if your wick doesn't suck up like a now if your wick doesn't pick up the solder and it doesn't wick in, there is lots of this stuff from China which just is really useful. It's like corporation toilet paper, the old shiny stuff, you know, when you wipe your bum and you chase the turds around and you end up with a little bobble on top of your head if you're not careful. Just don't work. So make sure you get this Chemi wick stuff. Is pretty good. It's quite cheap. You get 8 meters or so on from Chemtronics on a roll, and you can get in varying widths. I use this one, which is the 4mm one, but you can use finer ones for finer work. To keep trimming it, that's a problem. Alright, so let's give this a bit of a clean up and see what we can find. Nothing under there. That bit looks okay, doesn't it? Now remove all the detritus from all these. Now when you're using your wick, make sure you don't accidentally solder it onto the board, and if it does get stuck, don't give her a tug because it will just pull the track off because you've soldered an anchor point onto the wick and it will take it with it when it comes off. Right, so that does look repairable, doesn't it? Repairable. So, finance toothbrush. So what we've got is the wife's hair dye bottle that's been washed out and filled up with isopropyl alcohol, my preferred cleaning agent. Smells quite nice, not too volatile, very good at cleaning. Got a light brush. You can see the flux coming off. Slowly, slowly, catch your monkey. There we are. Not very pretty, is it? There's more flux and detritus around here, just needs scraping off, I think. Right, we have zero tracks there. So give it a quick wipe. Bit more love juice. Right, so we've got a clean base on which we can start to work, should I say. Right, the first thing to do is to get a scalpel, and because there's nothing around this anchor point, we're just going to scrape off some of these solder resist so we can get a soldered anchor at this point. Probably not that electrically important, but if you can fix that, you might as well. Expose a lovely bright shiny copper underneath. I don't know why people just don't think when they make these products. It's just such a glaringly obvious, and you'd think it would be like they would have a tug test. You know, whenever we made a product with a cable on it, we used to give it all sorts of bending tests and tugging tests, and we used to put a cable, plug a cable into it, and then have the cable over a pulley and then drop a weight. Obviously you can, the impulse and the shock and the tug, you know, to simulate someone trying to pick a piece of kit up with a lead that's tangled around a table leg or something and carrying it away, and suddenly finding that they're yanked backwards to because the cable snagged on something and they've forgotten to unplug. And then, you know, basically it's show over. It's ripped up PCB, back to the repair engineer for another socket change. Now, anchoring it on the board is one thing, you know. This should be held by the housing, clamped onto this board via the actual plastic or metal housing, but there's just an aperture in the back panel and this socket behind it, and this is why it gets ripped off, because it's not being, these pegs are doing nothing. The thing can lift up, and the thing, once it's lifted up and these pegs are disengaged, you can push it back, you can pull it out, you can rip it right out through the hole. It's not good. Right, so I can put a bit of flux on that and then just tin it to make sure it can be tinned, that we've removed the etch resist, or the solder's resist screen has been removed. As you know, things go better with flux. I'm going to work that around just to work off any excessive . There we are. Right, we've got a lovely tinned area around there onto which we can put a big blob of solder to anchor that on. At least make electrical connection. It's not going to be very mechanically sound, but we'll be alright for the time being, I think. And a quick more dab of the old love juice. One thing you have to be careful about when you're using IPA, if you're repairing kit and it's got fairly high impedance pins and there's flux on the board, you might find the thing doesn't work properly and you leave it on the shelf for a day to dry out, and then it will work. So it does make, you need to make sure you clean off the IPA, or at least wash it. So if you make a solution of flux on the board because you know you've got puddle on there and you're messing around mixing it all up, you're making a flux IPA solution, well, you need to dab that off maybe with a cloth or something like that, and then wash it. So you just hold it and then squirt, and then a fresh IPA comes on, takes all the residue off, and you end up with a nice shiny board with no flux on it, okay, like we have here. Now the socket itself, where's it gone? There it is. That's the socket you need. Patent pending. Probably still pending, so probably copied someone else's, I expect. Okay. That looks pretty good to me. Now what I'm going to use to stick this on is underneath here, there's a flat area. Can you see this flat area here? This section is raised up, it's flat, and that's what's in contact with the board. So what I'm going to use is this stuff here. It's expensive. It is super glue, but I would call it, I don't know, hyper glue or super duper glue because it is very good. It's about $35. Oh god, I'm running out. Look, I've only got a third of a pot left. It's about 30 quid, 25-35 pounds a pot, but it lasts a long time, and I keep mine in the fridge. So this is cold at the moment. It is the stuff that gives off the acetic acid vapour, you know, the old smelly vapour, but if you let it cure before you seal anything up, it's fine. It's not that bad, but you can stick plastic, rubber, steel to plastic, steel to rubber, and it's got obviously a lot of extra stuff in there besides the super glue to make it very, very strong and very good. And I've used it for sticking all sorts of things on plastic clips where, you know, on speedometers and things where you think, when I put that back in, that'll just snap off. But no, it's it is very, very good, providing you do the preparation properly. That's the main thing. So what I'm going to do, start off with, is just rub this etch resist, and rough it up a little bit to give it something to purchase on. Just to make it into a matte finish with lots of little scratches for the glue. Almost, yeah, well, at molecular level, it's something to key the actual adhesive onto the board. Okay. Now this will be very strong when it's done. Doesn't look that pretty, but it's a necessary step. I have learned this through doing tug tests. Right, new connector. We'll just get rid of any mold release or anything on here as well. It's glass reinforced plastic, so there's glass fibres in there. You want to expose the end of the glass fibres so that they can key in with the adhesive. You bored yet? That's what it takes to do a good job, boys. Give a quick brush over with the old brush. Right, so it comes time to place the connector. So a little dab will do you, as they say. A little dab, you don't want too much, you don't want it oozing out everywhere, you want just enough to go between this. So let's just check to make sure there's no gap in there. No, it's sitting down squarely on it, alright. So what we're going to do, get the expensive super glue, and just put a, like that, that'll spread out perfectly underneath. Going to drop our glue connector onto the board. I might put some around the pins as well. That's a good idea, isn't it? A little bit in the hole. Just go around the pins. Now that will not come off unless you really are desperate to ruin your deck. Right, so it's on. So now we need to find a clamp just to hold that in position for about 20 minutes while it glues. Alright, just to help this become a homogeneous blob of solder, we're going to use a bit of copper wire. It's 1mm, 22 gauge, whatever that is. You can tell how long I've had this roll of tin copper wire. Just going to make a little staple to fit on there to help it solder. It's still connected, as you can see. I can snip that wire off once I fixed it on. So here it is. Here's our copper wire sitting in position. I'm just going to put a little dab of flux on. There we go. Make sure she goes on okay. I can snip the wire off. It's just resting there at the moment in position. Carefully adjusted by moving the roll of copper wire to there. Okay, let's solder that on there now. I might turn that round just a little bit. There. Beautiful. Give it a good old bath. Make sure it wets onto the board. Don't push it around unless you absolutely have to. Yeah, that little bit there is the actual part of the connector. Look, so that's anchored on this side, anchored on that side. It's very solid. It's glued on. So now we've just got to reinstate these connections back here. You can see these holes here. I was wondering whether I could put wires into these pads, but I think they're just pads. And also that this, you can see that there is a multi-layer board. So there's blind vias on this board, which you'd have to wire this up. Then some of the vias go through to different layers, but they don't go all the way through the board necessarily. They make several double-sided boards, and then the holes that go through to different layers are drilled and lined up, and then they do another plating process after they've bonded the layers of board together. It's quite a long-winded process, but they're not coming out down here, so we've got to lay them on and solder them at the back. Now this connection over here was a good one, wasn't it? That one, that was intact and still connected on the board, so let's just solder that on. Okay, that's the first one soldered. This one doesn't go anywhere, but there is a copper anchor there, but it's the track is broken. It goes to that point there where my soldering iron is pointed. We will just solder that onto the board just for shits and giggles. Right then, so what we're going to use to connect this up, I'll use red. I've got 3 different colours of this stuff. I'm going to use Kynar insulated wrap wire. We used to call it PC modding wire, but it's actually for wrapping with a wrapping tool. The old turn pin socket days, when you had long pins coming through from the bottom of the connector, you could wire wrap boards together by twiddling wires around the post, feeding the wire around a loom, and then twiddling it somewhere else. In fact, we used to have a machine that would wrap logic cards with about 50 or 60 ICs on, and you place the ICs in, and the wrapping machine would automatically go around and wrap the pins and route the wire on a big roll of wire, strip it, wrap it around the pin, move along down through the loom, through the actual supporting pegs, and you end up with a forest of wires which were laid out amongst the guide pegs, and you go around and wire wrap them. Sorry, you go around and then do loom wrapping with string or tie wraps. So that's the stuff. It's Kynar. It is sort of heat resistant, but not brilliantly, so I'm going to solder it on 320. Turn the iron down. Right, skin in this stuff. Remove the insulation from the Kynar wire. Easier said than done. Just like that. Make sure you don't cut into the wire. You just want to, we'll have a piece about this long. I'll make it a bit longer, just in case we have a bit of a skinning mishap. Hold on to it with something else, because you can't hold on to it with your fingers. The right amount. Practice this, because don't nick into your wire, because if you nick into your wire, it'll just break off as soon as you try and solder it. Now we want very short ends on this, so I'm going to trim these off a little bit. There we are, that's about right. And I've got a little bit of flux on that solder bob. Tin your end. Clean your tip. Put a little bit of solder on your tip. Down onto the board, and it goes on to that point there. Alright, I've made sure not to encroach on the copper, or have I? Yeah, that's a reflection. You can see that's not a piece of copper. You can see there's no holder, and it's angled up slightly so that the wire as it comes out there is going to be bridged over the edge of the rest of the ground plane on the copper, so it can't break through. It won't touch through the etch resist and short onto the ground plane. Right, now this does look a bit long, but trust me, it's better to make them a bit longer than you need them than try and struggle with short wires. That's my view, and I am going to stick to it. Right, tin my end. Can you see this all right? Can you see it? Should we go for a close-up soldering action? All right. Now tweezers. Someone's bastardised my tweezers. Look at that. Give me a moment while I straighten out my tip. It's gone more like pincers than tweezers at the moment because someone has given them some grief. Okay, so our first connection is now made, which is very nice indeed. Very, very nice. Alright, so we've got 4 more to do. It shouldn't take long, should it? It shouldn't take long. I'm going to use the same old Kynar wire to do this. I'm just going to strip me a length. Oh, it'll snip me off a length. So the best thing to do is to just put the smallest layer of this, something like this king bow. Can you focus on that, you focusing thing? Gets everywhere, mind you. It's like dog shit. Yeah, RMA 218. It says it causes cancer, but bloody everything causes cancer. So I'm just going to take the tiniest bit. I don't want to get this all over the connector. So go up the pins and cause problems if it migrates anywhere. And just flux up these pins a little bit. A little bit of flux around there and flux on those pads, just the tiniest film. Then you'll end up with a nice shiny shoulder joint, and it'll wet nicely and it will make life a lot easier, because as I said before, things just do go easier with flux. Clean your tip. Got the robot pubes here, look for cleaning tips. It's just basically a stainless steel scouring pad and you wiggle your tip around in it. It's a bit scratchy. But yeah, it comes out nice and clean. You can't really see that, can you? No. It's on set focus at the moment, focused on the surface of this board, that's why. That's the trouble with macro lenses. Right. Take the length of my wire. Tin the length of my wire. That's it. And here we go, here goes nothing. Okay, you need a decent blob of solder on each of these pads. Okay, and a decent blob of solder on each of the pins. Alright, and then we just lay our wire on. Like so. Solder onto the pin, solder onto the pad. And then cut. Number 2. Clean, clean, clean. Number 2. Centre of snip. Obviously don't cut the track, so you want to cut it on the actual solder bead itself. There you go. And then hopefully we get away with doing the next one without refluxing. Lovely job. There we are. Number 4. Alright, so they're soldered on now. They're not going anywhere as long as this doesn't move, which it won't because it's really fixed on. Now we're going to put a little bit of the old juice on here. A little bit of light brushing. Okay. Now, out of respect to our customer, we are going to buzz these out to make sure that nothing funny has gone on, because I don't know how to fully test this deck, really. I've never used one. I'm more of a... I play the guitar, but I don't play with rigs of DJ equipment. So that goes to there. Yeah, it does. That one goes to there. Yeah, it does. This one goes to there. Yeah, it does. And then this one goes to there. Well, okay, so that's how you change the socket. That's the best way to do it. It's fixed on there now. It's not going to come off. It's nice and solidly anchored. We haven't got any contamination on the pins. RJ45's socket. Anyway, whatever it is, it's one of those LAN type RJ sockets. Everything else looks alright. We haven't got any bits of detritus on our board. The back side is clean. Yeah, so it's now, take my paintbrush out of the way, ready to be reassembled. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to change your socket, let me know. Otherwise not, good luck if you're trying yourself. Thanks for watching, and if you just hit the titty button down in the corner to subscribe, I'd appreciate that. It'd help me fund my videos, my efforts to help people repair stuff, and leave me a like, because I like likes. Thanks for watching.